All right. Well, welcome everyone. Um, Thanks for being here for Impact and Coffee on this chilly Tuesday morning. Here at Impact and Coffee, we usually like to start talking about Gratitude Tuesday. So if you can introduce yourself in the chat, say your name, your organization, and what you're grateful for. I'm personally grateful for the rain we've been getting. It's going to be a nice, moist winter, hopefully. Today we have with us Christine Glidden with Women to Be. She'll be speaking about the organization. We have Sarah, who's also part of the team for Impact and Coffee, and Jermaine. So welcome, and Christine, if you would like to take it away.
I will. So, Sarah, can you put the slideshow to the side and I'll just speak?
For sure. But right now, let me just give a little introduction regarding Christine. So let me talk to you about Christine. Christine Glidden founded Women to Be in 2015 to become one of the fundamental components of comprehensive health effort to provide girls and women in the world the opportunity to stay in school, get an education, participate in day-to-day activities, make informed decisions about bearing children, and become economic drivers in their communities. Christine has distributed 10,000 kits and health classes around the world. She's been 3 times to Nepal and once each to Zambia and Mexico, and numerous times to the Navajo Nation. With the help of a small army of volunteers, this vision has become reality. Through her partnerships and international organizations and community leaders, Christine knows that the success of the projects lies in relationships. Her worldwide network has taken her to new locations, also in need of these products. So without further ado, thank you, Christine. And I'll stop sharing right now.
Thank you. Well, I am Christine Chalufia Glidden. I'm founder and director of a nonprofit based here in Albuquerque. It's a 501c3. And please keep in mind as I speak to you about my project that we are all volunteers. Every single one of us works because we believe in the mission. One of the first questions that I noticed on the list of questions that I was given is, how are you? And how are you really? And so I think that prohibits me from saying things like, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm okay. How am I really? Well, how am I really? I think I am how all of us really are. And that is, we are everything. Every feeling, I could say I'm excited about this presentation or I'm fearful of this presentation, but I get to choose. Throughout my day, because I have access to every feeling that there is, again, I get to choose how I'm going to feel. And my feelings are based in what I think. So if I think of a thing like giving this presentation, and I think that it's going to be, people are going to be judging me or criticizing me or holding back or whatever, that makes me fearful of this presentation. But if I say, wow, this is great, I get to talk about my project and these people just want to learn and be curious about who I am and what I'm doing, then it feels like such an invitation. And that's the way I select today how I want to feel about this presentation, because that's what I choose to think. And thoughts are limitless. There's every possibility that can be. And I get to choose. I get to select the possibility that appeals to me at the moment. And for the most part, I try throughout my day to think the thoughts that make me happy, because then I get to feel happy. I get to feel at peace. First slide, please. So I am the founder of Women to Be, and I'd like to tell you how that whole thing came about. In 2015, I met a young woman who had recently been what they call relocated from Nepal, where she had lived in a Nepali refugee camp for 17 years. And she shows up in Albuquerque knowing nothing, no one, doesn't know how to dress, doesn't know how to go look for a job, how to live, how to speak to people. When I met her early on, she told me about the conditions in her refugee camp. And she told me about the murder, the rape. Actually, she herself had been raped. She told me about the diet, the nutritional quality of what it is that she was able to eat, that she was given to eat. She told me about the sanitation, and I could go on and offer all this to you. I won't, but I can tell you that it's just unimaginable, unconscionable, and just unbelievable. One day, she and I met, as we often did, having tea together. And she told me that throughout the 17 years that she lived in this camp, none of the women and girls, including herself, had underwear or sanitary pads. 100,000 people living there. I'm going to guess that 35,000 or 40,000 of the women there didn't have underwear or sanitary protection. She told me that during the course of her period of 4 or 5 days, she would sit in the corner of her home, which is basically a hut, wooden hut with a tin roof, and sit in the corner on a rag and wait until her period was over. And this is in front of her father, her brothers, her uncles, whomever come into the house. And you can imagine the shame and embarrassment and the loss of dignity that she experienced having to do this. She told me that when she wanted to go out into the public areas of the camp, when she had her period, she would wrap something around her head so no one knew the identity of the young woman who was bleeding down the middle of her legs. When she told me this, I was like totally stunned. I couldn't think of anything else. I went home, and on the couch, I started to think about this problem, and I knew that I could not live another moment on the planet without doing something. When a girl in Nepal, and probably there are more girls in the world than not Westerners like ourselves, where sanitary pads of all different variations are available to us, we don't even think about it. So this made me think about it. When a girl doesn't have what she needs each month, she often misses school. She's too embarrassed and fearful to go to school because she's afraid she's going to have an accident. After many misses of school, she often drops out. And a girl in Nepal, and again, this is common around the world, as soon as she drops out, even at age 12 and 13, she becomes marriage material. She gets married at 13. She doesn't know what's going to happen for herself in marital intimacy. She doesn't know what sexual intercourse is. And so she has that whole frightful experience, I can imagine. And she becomes pregnant at 14 in a body that's really unprepared to handle a pregnancy, a healthy pregnancy. And then she continues to have babies, unintended babies. This means that she now enters a life of dependence, of lack of integrity, lack of dignity, and she's just kind of imprisoned. She has no skill, she has no future, she has no hope. And so I did, long story, but I found online this thing called a kit, and I'm going to show you a little bit what it is. In a kit, first of all, there's 2 pair of underwear. We also provide 8 sanitary pads, just like this. They're made from flannel. She gets 2 what we call wrappers that hold the pads in these pockets up and down here. And then the back of this has snaps. And so it snaps around the base of the underwear to hold everything in place. There's also a waterproof barrier sewn within that wrapper. We give her 2 Ziploc bags so that during the day when she's in school, she takes her used pads, puts them in the Ziploc bag, supplies herself with clean pads. End of the day, she takes everything out of the Ziploc bag, washes it, dries it overnight, and she's ready to go next day in the morning back to school. And all of this is held discreetly in a drawstring bag just like this. So that's my fix. It's not perfect. It's never intended to be perfect, but it's a tremendous improvement over rags and leaves. Women to Be, again, all volunteer, has been to Nepal 4 times, Zambia once, as Sarah mentioned, Guatemala, Mexico several times. Thank you to Sarah for making that happen. And as well, Sarah helped me when we went to the Navajo Nation and distributed pads out there, kits out there. So far in the world, we have distributed 15,000 kits. A kit lasts 3 years. Do the math. It's 45,000 years. 45,000 years. I can't even, I think about it, I can't imagine. I mean, what we've done together as volunteers to do this. 45,000 years of opportunity, of possibility, of education. And you know what? Forget all that, right? 45,000 years of dignity, just dignity for girls and women so that they can feel good about themselves and raise their level of self-esteem. So I'm going to show you a little bit now where we've been and what we've done. So first slide, please. This is my first visit to Nepal. You can see where we go is very remote, very difficult to get to. Back to the first slide, previous slide there. That mountain you're looking at is at 26,000 feet, and we didn't go that high. The highest I went was about 14,000 feet. But this place is remote. It borders Tibet. It's called the Kingdom of Mustang. And it's from the lifestyle is from time immemorial. You can't even count. The first time I went, we fabricated the kits here in Albuquerque by volunteers and shipped them to Nepal. But after that first shipment, we realized it's not only expensive, it's complicated, and we found ourselves paying, money just to as bribes to get our product in. So we decided to establish a sewing center in Nepal, which we did. Next slide, please. And here's our sewing center. You can see what we do is we train women to sew, so they have a skill forever throughout their lives. And as well, then we employ them not only to sew our kits, but we also find commercial contracts to keep the women busy and make our sewing center sustainable. At this point in my life, and this point in my experience, if it's not sustainable, I'm not doing it. Next slide, please. Another photo, a woman just at her machine. The machine is electric and it's also mechanical or manual. So it has treadle pads in case the electricity goes out, which is not infrequent. Next slide, please. This is a kind of a random photo I chose to show you the kinds of places that we go. This is a view from one of the schools that we went to. So we find these schools, we visit, we distribute kits, and we give a reproductive health class so a girl knows everything about her body, why she bleeds. She doesn't have to be fearful of it. And we tell her and women what to expect from marital intimacy, so that the first night she's become married, she knows what to expect, and it's not this horrible, terrifying experience for her. Next slide, please. This is on my first visit in the Kingdom of Mustang, in those high mountains in the Annapurna range of the Himalayas, and she's doing the reproductive health class, phase 2 egg release. This woman told me she speaks the local language because she's from that local community. She also speaks English, which of course I was grateful for. And she told me the night before she was going to deliver her first class that there was no word for fallopian tube. So she made one up. That's what you do. You scramble, you make it happen. Doesn't matter. You make it happen. Next slide, please. Here's some girls in one of the classrooms. These girls are very shy, tentative. And so what we do, and again, not me because I don't speak the language, but my partners who do, warm the girls up with some jokes and some indication of what we're about to speak about. And then they speak about it and they give the class and we distribute the kits. And I don't speak Nepali, but I can tell you over the time that I've been doing this, I have learned to speak the language of faces. And I look at that face and I speak it because she's speaking to me. Next slide, please. Here's a classroom. I'm over there in the red. That mark on my head is just a mark that I'm given in all the schools as a sign of welcome. And I do feel welcomed. You can see all the girls in this class now have their kids, and they're just imagining the possibility of how their lives will change. Next slide, please. Outside the school, again, the girls with their kits. And so this was in March 2020. Is that right? Yeah. Just as COVID was beginning. And now suddenly in that end of March, it's a global disaster. Every person on the planet is fearful. We don't know what's going on. In Nepal, the international and only airport was locked down, which means there are no flights, not even domestic, in or out. So now I can't leave. I didn't know whether I was going to be there for months or days. I wasn't sure. I didn't know. There was no information. I was kind of terrified. I chose to be terrified. It was hard to avoid. So finally, the U.S. Department of the State Department and the U.S. Embassy offered me and 301 other people the chance to leave Nepal on what they call an emergency repatriation flight. So I got on that flight and I was able to come home, finally. First thing I do is I pick up the newspaper, what's happening in New Mexico. And of course, I read about the hotspot of the entire nation, which is the Navajo Nation, of people, contracting COVID, not understanding COVID, with no protection against COVID, no face masks, nothing. And they're dying. They're just simply dying and dying and dying. And so just like when I heard about that young woman in the refugee camp, again, I was stunned and I knew I had to do something. So, but what do? So I started to clean out my cupboard and my neighbors' cupboards, my friends' cupboards, but I didn't know where to go out to the Navajo Nation. Like, where's the front door? There's no front door. Fortunately and serendipitously, I met a man who happened to be Navajo. He made introductions for me and I found a way to get out there. Next slide, please. So here I am with my Rotary. I'm a Rotarian and these are members of my Rotary Club. And we went out there and started delivering what we could. The Jewish Community Foundation jumped on board. First thing, they started to collect different items of food. We brought those out. We brought out anything that we could. So the person that you see also on the right behind the black mask is Brian Colon. And I can't tell you what he did from his office as state auditor, but also personally, what he did to take care of this crisis. Next slide, please. Here's a house, just kind of a typical house that we went to. Keep in mind, at this point, Rotary International gave my club a disaster relief grant, knowing that the work that I was doing, for $25,000. Then the Santa Fe and Albuquerque Community Foundations jumped on board, gave us another $25,000. We collected another $7,000 from donations. So now here I am going from my cupboard to having $57,000. Well, how do you spend that? I don't cook. How do you even spend that on food? So I found out. I said I would do it, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend this money. And I learned how to buy not just bulk food from one of the distributors here in town, which is Benny Keith, but I learned what the Navajo people ate so that we would deliver the stuff that they wanted. I learned to order tons of food every week, tons of food every week. And they'd come in these big bags and boxes. So I had to find between 15 and 20 volunteers every week to break down the big boxes and big bags. And you see in the front here of this photo, these are the bags that we filled with food and supplies and water. And the people who volunteered totally broke all of the rules of COVID And we had face masks, but we worked side by side, shoulder to shoulder to get these bags made. And then we drove them out every week or every other week to Navajo to deliver them. It's 2.5 hours out there, 2.5 hours back. Thank you, Sarah, for making that happen with us. Sarah did a tremendous job. And next slide, please, shows another home that we went to. A man who lives in his home, kind of set up for his convenience. He lives in this home, winter and summer, and he totally welcomed us and was grateful to have his supplies. Women to Be also, by the way, donated 1,000 kits from our supply in Albuquerque to the women and girls out there who could not make it to the store because of COVID, or got to the store and found that the shelves were empty. And then once that was over and I recovered from that, it took me, it disturbed me. I was burnt out. I was working on this thing in a total chaos, recreating the project every week to do it. And I know you know that feeling. I know I'm talking to people who work hard and people who give of themselves to their projects. So you know exactly how I was feeling. After that project was over, I started my next project in Nepal. Next slide, please. We started a second sewing center in a more remote area. And so here you see in Pokhara, near Pokhara, Nepal, and that's my partner on this project, Ishu, who just was remarkable. My partners, my Rotarian partners in Nepal are remarkable people. I have been so lucky because if they say they're going to do something, they actually do it. In fact, they do more. They deliver more than what they say. Next slide, please. I believe that this is going to be a photo of the staff, the women who were sewing for us. Next slide, please. And you can see the intention on their face in this next slide. Next slide, Sarah. You see them sewing, learning to sew. Next slide, please. And look at these women. I mean, they're grateful to have jobs. Otherwise, they're living with nothing and no hope. On this slide, and this is my third project, which I'm fundraising for right now, is at a deaf school. People in Nepal and many, many countries around the world, people with physical and handicaps are just discarded. I don't even want to say second-rate citizens. I want to say 17th class. They cannot find jobs. They're an embarrassment for their family, and they're just kind of left in the back room. So here, the school has been started. I'm here being welcomed with namastes and open palms of welcome. And you can see I have the scarf around my neck, which again is a form of welcome that they put over your head and they honor you. I got to tell you something. I felt like a freaking rock star showing up at these places. My skin color, the fact that I was a woman, that I came from the US, all of these things mean so much. I mean, it's an illusion that these people have, that we lived in this perfect world. Next slide, please. Here are some kids in their classroom. First thing you walk into the class, what they do is stand up, they're smiling, they're namasteing me, and just grinning from ear to ear, happy to have me there and knowing that I bring opportunity for them. Next slide, please. This slide shows me, and in the middle there is my new partner, Rotarian. His name is Sudeep. And then the gentleman gesturing on the right is the principal of the class. And here we are scoping out exactly what we want to do, and we know what we want to do. We want to start not only a sewing center for these kids, we also want to start a bakery center. We want to teach kids how to bake with some experience on Sudeep's part. He's learned that baking centers are more quickly profitable and kind of provide a sustainable and maintainable income on a regular basis, as opposed to the sewing centers, which move from contract to contract. And so we want to do both. Next slide. This slide shows the baking center that Sudeep already has started in another section in Kathmandu. Look at these kids. I mean, happy, grinning, thrilled to have this skill and an opportunity to live a life of contribution and success. So I just look at the faces, and you look at the faces, you can see, you can read what this means to them. And I think this is probably going to be my last slide. Next one, please. So why would I show you this little human entity? I show you this because this is my Kanyanta. She was born Hadley, but I call her Kanyanta, and I'll tell you a short story in a minute about how that whole thing happened. I show you this slide for a few reasons. One is because she's wearing a dress that was made for her at the Second Sewing Center in Nepal. I also show you this slide because of what she means to me. Almost nearly exactly 1 year ago, I lost my husband. So this year has been for me a year of transition, re-identifying myself, reprioritizing, certainly learning of myself by observing myself throughout the different episodes that just kind of show up in my life now, unpredictable. And so my life now is different. And the two things that I live for now that are my priorities are this little girl, Kanyanta, and my projects. They have come to give me such purpose and such energy and such intention. So I'm grateful for that, for both. And then I also have a daughter and a son-in-law who, fall into that picture somewhere too. The other reason I show you this picture of her is, you may know this, but when a baby is born and she looks at her primary caregiver, she doesn't know that that's not her. She doesn't know where she ends and other begins. So her job now for these past 2 years and for many years to come, she's going to identify herself and define herself and build boundaries to keep herself safe and keep other that's not safe out. What I have discovered over this past, especially this past year, although I know it was happening earlier, is I want to knock down my boundaries. I want to live vulnerably. I want to invite people in a way that I've never done that before. I want to know who they are and what's important to them. I want to take risks. I want to be closer to life and more alive. And I want deeper relationships. I want to be closer to nature. And the way that I find that I do that is by knocking down my boundaries and just living like this. One of the questions that was on that list of questions that kind of struck me was, I'm reading it here now. How can nonprofit workers come together to support and represent each other? And I thought, how would I do that? Well, that's a doing activity to give support, to be representative. And I thought to myself, before you can do, you have to be. And I go back to Gandhi's statement around be the change you want to be in the world. And so if I want to be generous or find generosity and find funding, I myself have to be generous. If I want to see patience in the world, I have to learn to be patient. And if I want peace in the world, I'm the one who has to bring the peace. And then I can support, and then I can be representative. But it's to be the thing first, to find this, identify this first, and then bring it to the world. And the person that I have found that I want to be is a person, first of all, does what she says she's going to do. When I said I was going to do something for girls in Nepal in the refugee camp, I did it. When I said I wanted to bring kits over to Nepal or establish sewing centers in Nepal, that was my intention. And I brought action to my intention and I did it. And so I want to go through the world, go through my everyday, meeting my promise. And I don't want to promise everything. I'm not going to start a water project in Guatemala. That's not something that I want to do, but I do want to bring health and happiness to girls in Nepal, and that's what I'm going to do. I also want to be curious, and that's a way of knocking down boundaries, is to be curious and listen. And what this does for me is it really brings me peace. And I'm going to end just by saying, by telling you the story of how I became Chilufya and Hadley became Kanyanta. When I was in Nepal, where we distributed 1,000 kits, I don't want to say I developed a friendship, because so I met this man who is the king of the Bemba people. And he's the leader of 6 million tribal members. 6 million. That's 2.5 times the size of New Mexico. And he's revered, he's worshipped. When he speaks the word of God. He's the king, he's the 38th king, or his full name is Chidimakulu Kanyanta Manga II. He's the paramount king, and he comes from a line of 38 generations of kings through the matrilineal bloodline. And when I was there, he said, I want to give you a name, a Bemba name. And I said, that's great. What is it? And he says, it's Chilufya Malenga. And I thought, that's great. What does it mean? And I was told, not by the king, but it was explained to me that Chilufya is the name of the mother of the first king. Can you imagine? So it's intimidating. I feel unworthy. And on the other hand, I want to live Chilufya energy every day. And so I do. And we are all Chilufyas. Every person on this call, everybody you're going to meet today has the gift and the welcome to be Chilufya every day, to be everything that she can be in a powerful way and in a generous way and in an effective way. So I try to live Chilufya every day, and my little Kanyanta here is named by the king. It's also his name, the name of the village that he comes from. So he's Chidimakulu Kanyanta Manga II. And so now when I call my granddaughter Kanyanta, she doesn't know it now, but later she's going to understand that that's her invitation to be involved in the bigger world. She doesn't have to be Hadley when she goes to kindergarten. She could show up as Kanyanta. So that's what I have to say today. And I think I'm done. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
That's very beautiful, Christine. It's so good to hear how intentional you are, not only about how you carry yourself in the world, but how you choose to feel about it. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Christine today? I actually have one, Christine. How did you, you're working in various places at this moment. How do you find collaborators? Or, you mentioned a little bit about the Navajo Nation, how it was kind of a serendipitous meeting. But you have been in other countries. How do you go about working internationally?
Well, that's a very common question that I get. And it's a good one. It's an instructive. You know, people say, well, why don't you go to India? Why don't you go to Uganda? So I go where I'm welcomed. So I find someone, or start to form a relationship, and I begin to watch very carefully how this person behaves. And so my two requirements for the people that I partner with are they responsible? And are they responsive? So basically, do they do what they say they're going to do? So there's kind of like in my mind, I don't want to say tests exactly, but things that I watch for as our relationship develops that convince me that they're responsible, that they do what they say. And I have met numerous people, and early on or even later on, I go, nope, that's not the person for me. So I wait. And I eventually find that person.
So it's a very lengthy
It can
process.
be. It can be. Fortunately, I'm a Rotarian, and most Rotarians, the vast majority, are those kinds of people. So when I have relationship with Rotarians in Nepal or wherever, that's where I go.
Perfect. Thank you. And Radha has her hand up. If you'd like to ask your question.
Sure. Thank you for sharing your vision with such love and spirit. I personally am moved and appreciate it very much. I'm with the Grant Plant here in Albuquerque, but I'm also a member of a sorority, and this work appeals to me in various ways. So thank you. My question is, what is it going to take, Christine, for you to have paid staff so that you don't have to kill yourself?
Well, we've thought long and hard about this. And right now in Nepal, we're developing, we have a small grant. Well, it's big for us, but small for everybody else on this call, to develop a media campaign. And so we're going to have TV, radio, and website, blogs, podcasts, everything, to offer out for free information to youth in the Kathmandu area, so that they know the real facts of life and not just work off gossip. And so we're going to cover the areas of reproductive health, intimacy, dating, and self-esteem. We're going to cover all of that, and it'll be replenished every week or so. And so we have one paid staff over there now who is going to be handling our media, our social media, and the website design. And then another person over there has donated TV time, which is expensive. But the reason I tell you that is that the other piece to this is we're also going to be selling kits. There are women, even in urban areas, who don't want to spend money on expensive disposables or care about the environment, by the way, and would be open and willing and welcoming, really, of a product that they could wash for their light days. Now, on their heavy days, I'm not sure what they would do, but they would at least have the choice. And then, of course, there are women outside the urban area who will be offered this, and that they can buy that. But our main goal would be to advertise, and there's only 2 products now that are offered online that you can find, and they're terribly inferior and expensive compared to the product that we would offer. So we're looking for other NGOs who might want to buy 100 or 500 or 5,000, and we could get our sewing centers to pay for this. I mean, to fabricate them, and then we would collect money, the profits, and be able to pay ourselves at least to some degree. You know, I hear what you're saying, and believe me, I wish that there was a way that I could be compensated in some fashion. But when you get to meet the Chirimakulu Kanyantamanga II, and when you get to read the faces and speak the faces of girls, and when you get to go and meet the crown prince of the kingdom of Mustang, and when you get to go into these mountains and see the Himalayas the way that they are, and when you get to go to places that are not, believe me, on the tourist track, in these places that I go, even Mexico. And who gets to go to the Navajo Nation and have friends there and relationships there? Believe me, that's another form of compensation that could never be have a price. Thank you for asking. So one more thing, if you don't mind, there was another question about something about how can the community help you?
That was gonna be my next.
So, right? Always remember to do the ask.
Yes, what can our community do for you?
Well, two things. One would be, I'm meeting on, I think on Friday, with the woman who oversees the unsheltered homeless people in Albuquerque. And I believe that there's a need there for our kids. And so I'd like to do a little, experiment, see how it goes. And even if these women just keep their kids for 6 months and then can't find a way to carry them around or can't find a way to clean them, right? Okay, I don't care. 6 months for me is plenty. So I'm hoping that there's a way that we can do that. So I'm also looking, and maybe this is where you can help, of other shelters of various domestic violence, sex trafficking, whatever, where kits like ours could be used here locally. I would love to have a presence here locally and help my neighbors that I see every day as I drive around the city. And the other thing I could use would be, I'm women to be, I am women to be, and people like Sarah, are great compliments and great helps to me. But pretty much, I work wherever my laptop is. And it can get lonely. I can get lonely, and the work is very insular. And so I have no tension. I have no walls. I have nothing to bounce off of. And so I know that I'm sick to death of thinking my own thoughts. I wish that there was another person who would help me think thoughts together. So I'm looking for some sort of coach, and I also need some accountability. I never write anything down. I'm probably never going to write anything down. It's all here. So I would like to have someone like once a week, even just for 15 minutes, that would keep track of me. I'm kind of wild and chaotic, and I need a straight line through what I'm doing. So if there was somebody like that once a week, 15 minutes or something, I don't know, work it out, that would be helpful to me. And it's also scary to me.
Great. Could you share your contact information for anyone who'd like to share
On
15
chat,
minutes with you once a week?
to put it on the chat?
Yes.
Okay. I'm doing that right now.
And again, if anyone has any contact information for some of the organizations or support groups that help unsheltered people, you can contact Christine. I know there's an organization that helps youth, New Day. I think that would be a good group to contact. They're
Noonday?
down in the International District.
Noonday?
New Day.
New Day.
I think it's
And
a New Day, actually.
do you have a contact there?
Yeah, I can email you.
If
Okay,
you're
great.
thinking Noonday, that's like a soup kitchen. Noonday does exist, and it is a soup kitchen. So,
Really?
yeah. So it does also help. Noonday Albuquerque.
Maybe that could be dessert.
New Day Youth and Family is a shelter for youth experiencing homelessness or who've transitioned out of foster care.
Mhm.
And there's
Great, thank you.
also a Dream Tree Project in Taos that serves homeless youth in northern New Mexico.
Sorry, what's that called again?
Dream Tree Project. I
Green,
will put Dream Tree. I'll put my name in chat and you can contact me because there's a number of organizations I can think of.
great. And did you say it's in Taos?
Yes.
Well, it happens I'm going to Taos tomorrow. See, I'm telling you, this happens to me all the time. It just, everything shows up.
Everything unfolds the way it should. Thank you, Sephora.
Sure. Catherine Hummel is the executive director, and I will add her email, or yeah, her email and the contact info.
Great. I'm just writing. Great. So now that I've talked to you, how's everybody? Really?
Hoping things will slow down. It's been a busy summer. I feel again, I feel like a lot of people in different organizations are saying the same thing. Summer was just a roller coaster. So maybe things will slow down a little bit this fall.
Yeah. Would anybody else have any questions or any other information that they would like to share? I can't believe that it's already over half of October. It's already going to be November, and this year really flew by. But yeah, thank you so much, Christine. We are very grateful that you opened up your heart today and shared with us the amazing work that your organization is doing. We're happy to be able to connect, and yeah, we'll look for the recording. Make sure you share it with your loved one, with your network, and that way more serendipitous things could start connecting. And we'll see you guys our next is in 2 Tuesdays, right? Our next, I can't remember the speaker. Do you remember, Denise? I don't remember who's speaking next.
I'm not sure. We'll have to send an email.
We'll send an email with more information. Thank you so much, Jermaine, for providing us with your Zoom link, and we'll see you on our next Impact and Coffee.
All right. Thank you all. Christine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.